So it's been a few weeks since our last analysis of the latest Mario Kart 8 trailer, in which we uncovered a ridiculous amount of details. And yet, we still didn't catch it all, as pointed out by you guys. So we're back again with part 3 of our Mario Kart 8 analysis, this time using the observations and theories pointed out by you honorary GameXplainers. But as always, please make sure to check out our previous analysis videos if you haven't already by clicking the links in the description below, as we'll only be covering the new stuff here. And with that, let's get started. Okay, so perhaps the biggest thing we forgot to mention in our previous analysis, as pointed out by Samuel Welch, is that the characters can now be seen physically holding onto the items they collect from item boxes. And this doesn't appear to be merely cosmetic. In fact, it suggests a pretty big change to the game, as this not only differs from most Mario Karts to date, but it's even quite different than the version that we played back at E3. Back then, the items worked just as they did in Mario Kart Wii or Mario Kart 7, where they remained safely in your possession until you either activated them, or in the case of some items, dragged them behind you for easier protection from incoming projectiles, like red shells. Now, although we don't see it in action, we strongly suspect they'll now work similar to how they did in Mario Kart Double Dash, where items couldn't be dragged behind you for use as an automatic shield. Instead, if you wanted to fend off incoming projectiles, you actually had to drop the item behind you at just the right time. It added an additional layer of skill to the game and made it trickier to hold on to the first place position, where you're basically only vulnerable from the rear. But beyond this, there might even be some other interesting implications here. For instance, because items were held in Double Dash, you could actually steal from other racers by running into them while using a mushroom or a star. Could this be the case here too? It also suggests that some items we saw at E3 may work differently now, such as the triple bananas for example, which were automatically dragged behind your cart, or the triple shells, which orbited your cart forming a protective barrier. So how will they work now? Well, if it's like Double Dash, your character may just juggle all three until you use or lose them. Although the fact that we don't see any triple items at all in the most recent trailer could mean that they were cut out completely, which might actually suggest a return to the simpler item system in the original Super Mario Kart, where you can only obtain one of any item. And along those same lines, it seems that you may now only be able to possess one item in total at any given time, as opposed to the two of past games, which again would harken back to the original Mario Kart. Now speaking of items, another one of our viewers, Jack Strum, points out that we actually did get a glimpse of an item that we hadn't yet seen in action, the Bomb. But it appears to function just as it has in past games, exploding either a few seconds after it's thrown, or seemingly immediately upon impact, as demonstrated by poor Luigi here. Okay, that's enough about items, let's move on to the racetracks. So in our previous analysis, we already pointed out that between the name, the tropical theme, and the Pianta spectators, that Sunshine Airport is pretty clearly based on Super Mario Sunshine. But Abe M takes it a step further, pointing out that the islands visible in the background are highly reminiscent of the ones seen during the opening cutscene of Super Mario Sunshine. And Techie Boom reminded us that those same islands are actually in the shape of animals, such as the turtle here. And he noticed that a similarly shaped one does seem to appear in the background of Sunshine Airport. Okay, it does look a bit different, and the resemblance could be entirely coincidental, but it's a cool idea all the same. Moving on, we had also pointed out before that the signboards inside the terminal here appear to reveal the names of several other courses from the game, and among them is one called Dolphin Shoals. Now previously we had suggested that the level, which we otherwise knew nothing about, may also have a Mario Sunshine theme, since that game was based on Isle Delfino, which was, you know, in the shape of a dolphin. But Kaibon the Renegade thought it was unlikely they'd base two tracks on the same game, and as it turns out, he might just be right. Because, in looking back at our footage from E3, we noticed something interesting. An advertisement featuring the dolphins from Super Mario World. So we now think there's a strong chance Dolphin Shoals will actually feature those dolphins instead, which will mark their first real appearance in the Mario Kart game. At least if we ignore the Dolphin Dasher card from Mario Kart Wii and a cameo in Mario Kart GP DX. Although there is another possibility. If we look at IGN's direct feed footage from E3, we can clearly see the poster says Super Marine World. And it may not just be a clever play on the title Super Mario World, but could actually be the name of the water park that we first saw advertised in the airport, which you pointed out in our last analysis. Although we can also see that it says Dive Shop too, so it could all just be referring to another storefront. Although one that mysteriously doesn't appear in this village. So clearly Sunshine Airport is chock full of cool little references. And Curtis the Geek Guy thinks that the airliners' names that were pointed out before may actually hint at a couple of new items. Specifically, he thinks that propeller tow transport could mean that the propeller head makes some kind of appearance, perhaps in a capacity similar to the feather from the original Mario Kart, or maybe help save you when you fall off a ledge. Then there's Boomerang Brothers International Airline, which he thinks could similarly hint at a boomerang type item, perhaps similar in style to the one seen in Mario 3D Land or World. Okay, so maybe both of these ideas are a bit of a stretch, but seeing as we haven't actually seen any new items yet at all, it's the best guess we have as to what they could be. And along those same lines, TPEM7777 noticed that 2 of the 3 airlines have links to other characters in the game. Of course, Galaxy Air is related to Rosalina, and Propeller Tow Transport is related to Toad, which makes Boomerang Brothers International Airline the odd one out. Could this maybe hint that a Boomerang Brother might be a playable character too? Now in our first analysis, we pointed out that a conveyor belt complete with moving boxes will appear as a hazard in this course. But Tinu Thomas thinks there's even more to this than meets the eye. Specifically, he thinks that its inclusion might mean that Mario Kart Wii's Toad Factory might return to Mario Kart 8 as a retro course, as that level also featured conveyor belts. And to back up his idea, he mentioned how both Mario Kart Wii's new Mario Circuit as well as a retro GameCube Mario Circuit both share the chain chomp hazard. Hey, he could be right. And speaking of conveyor belts, LEGO Hobbit Boy somehow spotted a really neat detail that we missed. If we zoom in on the boxes of the conveyor belt here, you can just barely make out a symbol on some of them, and it appears to be that of the robot from Super Mario Galaxy. Not only is this pretty cool, but we can't help but wonder if it might hint at him being a playable character too. Okay, and that covers it for Sunshine Airport, so let's motor on over to Sweet Sweet Canyon. Now before we had noted that the level is a clear connection to both Princess Daisy and Princess Peach, as noted by the royal patisserie signs throughout the course. But viewer The Faultline reminded us that we actually saw this business storefront in the San Francisco inspired level that we first played at E3, where it can be seen on one of the street corners. And while we're on this level, Elias Schnitzer noted that there's also an ad for Galaxy Air here too. So between this and Sunshine Airport's various references, it seems the developers may really be trying to make this feel like an interconnected world. In fact, if we look back at that San Francisco course again, we can see several other storefronts or places such as Coconut Cafe, Tropical Grocery, and Fountain Cafe. Now if any of those sound familiar, that's because those stores can also be found in Mario Kart Wii's Coconut Mall. Who knew that the Mushroom Kingdom had franchise locations? But are they just a fun reference, or could they be a hint that maybe Coconut Mall's returning as a retro course too? Although the fact that it just appeared as a retro course in Mario Kart 7 might make this unlikely, as we somehow doubt Nintendo would want to include the same track in 3 games straight. Next up we have Bone Dry Dunes. Now if you watched our previous analysis, then you already know how most of the course plays out, based on us piecing together the assorted scenes. But one of our viewers caught something that we totally missed, which reveals just a bit more about how the course is laid out. Now as we noted before, you'll pass by a sand geyser early into the race, and then you'll pass by another one quite a bit later as you fly toward Dry Bowser's mouth. But as both Jump 7 Holes and Alexander points out, that's actually the same sand geyser. Check it out. Do you see the wooden bridge and torches here? Well, you can actually just barely see them in the background of the first clip too. And if you look real close, you can even see the spikes that make up Dry Bowser's back. So because we now know that Dry Bowser is so close to the finish line, it seems that our theory of that section coming near the end is pretty on point. Particularly as you can easily imagine how the racetrack winds through the mountainside into the final bend we see just before the finish line. And speaking of Dry Bowser, Glitcher Kid thinks that his appearance here might mean that he'll return as a playable character. Finally, Shiny Appearance noticed a really tiny detail that we overlooked. If you freeze this clip right here, we can see a petrified starfish on the ground. So it seems between the ships, the lighthouse, and now the starfish, this may once have been a bustling port, which is pretty cool. Okay, and that's enough about this track. Let's roll on over to Thwomp Ruins, since there's a single detail there that we noticed that we missed before. Now as you pointed out previously, when you reach this segment, you'll have the option of the 3 main routes, in addition to driving through the water below. But we've since noticed that there may be just as many routes in the water itself, as not only can you go to either side, but there appears to be a path right through the middle wall here as well. Yeah, it's a small thing, but you know us, we can't let any detail slide. Alright, and that covers it for Thwomp Ruins, so let's move on to the final course, Cloud Top Cruise, as we also caught a couple of more details that we missed before. So we already knew that you drive through the airship at some point, as shown by the racers coming from the right here. But in rewatching the clip, we noticed something else. If you keep an eye on the inside of the airship, you'll notice a racer dropping in from the left. So clearly there are actually 2 routes through the airship, which we get a better look at a second or 2 later. And as it turns out, you're not really racing through the airship so much as you are across the top of it. Now while we're talking about the airship, we also notice it has Bowser's Ugly Mug on the front, as we can better see in this clip. The whole thing appears to be a direct reference to the airship from Super Mario Galaxy. And in case there was any doubt, Metroid's ETU noticed something about the music for this course too. Let's take a listen. Yep, the music actually features elements of the popular Gusty Garden Galaxy from the same game. Okay, and that covers it for everything about the racetracks themselves, but there's still a few additional details that you guys pointed out. For instance, Avery caught the fact that, like her Mario Kart 7 appearance, Rosalina lacks a Luma that accompanied her in the Wii version. But perhaps more importantly, that motorcycle she's riding? Well, it may not actually be hers, because as Bowser Jr. fan 247 points out, it actually has a logo for Princess Patisserie on it, which would make it either Peaches or Daisy's. He then goes on to note that the orange icon also featured on the bike actually matches that of the soda bottles in Sweet Sweet Canyon. Man, this game has connections all over the place. But Rosalina's motorcycle isn't the only thing filled to the brim with details. Let's take one more look at Wario's ride here. Now we already pointed out the question block on the engine block, but TNT Blows Up Minecraft points out that the pistons themselves are actually shaped like mushrooms. How cool is that? Okay, we're just about done here, but there's still 2 final details that I actually meant to point out last time but got lost in the shuffle. First up is this scene where we can just barely see Bowser materialize above the course after presumably falling off just seconds before. Yeah, it's not that interesting, but it does show that the computer doesn't get the same preferred treatment that Lakitu now affords human players, by actually flying them back to where they fell off instead of cutting away, which is a first for the Mario Kart series. More important though are these new hovering objects found in a few of the hang gliding sections, as seen in Sunshine Airport and again in Cloud Top Cruise. We're not entirely sure what they're there for, but we think they just may mark the out-of-bounds areas of the flight path, or maybe they act as invisible walls instead. What we do know that it seems they only appear in areas of steep elevation changes, such as when flying to a track far above or far below, so it seems they may only be there to make sure you know where you're going. And with that, we're done covering everything we and you could dig up on the latest Mario Kart 8 trailer. As always, let us know if you missed anything by posting in the comments below. If you liked this video, please make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You'll find links to them in the description below. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain.com for more on Mario Kart 8 and other things gaming too.